say you're not involved. Don't try to convince yourself that these problems don't affect you at all. Because now it's Lebanon, Azania, Grenada. How many more? Tell me now. How many more? Don't you stand on the sidelines and watch your children go off to war. Don't stand back and wait for this violence to come to your door. Because now it's Chile, Guatemala, El Salvador. How many more? Tell me now. How
Peace and love. Welcome to the Northeast Political Prisoner Coalition. This is our podcast, and this is U.S. political prisoners and you. Always making a connection between the political prisoners and our everyday lives and what's going on currently and what's we need to do about our current situation to bring them home, how we need to utilize our resources, organize our resources, and bring our political prisoners home. I'm Brother Frank, and I'm with former political prisoner.
Brother Tyreek, free all political prisoners and prisoners of war. I am Tyreek. I am a Black Panther. I am a former member of the Black Liberation Army. I spent 17 years in various American death camp prisons as a prisoner of war. I love you because you are intelligent. You're watching this program so you can learn what is going on in the world. Also, I love you because you have the courage to watch the program, even though the authorities are angry with all of us for learning what we need to know to survive living in this society. Free all political prisoners and prisoners of war.
Thank you for that incredible introduction. So today we're talking about parole, right? Identifying parole and what it is, and the brother will talk about his experience dealing with the parole board and how we can use our influence as taxpayers to influence the outcome when our beloved political prisoners are facing parole hearings. For us to start talking about parole, the parole hearings, the parole board, and so forth, I want to break down how that process works. So there's 4 steps. And the initial interview, incarcerated individuals are scheduled for an initial interview with the parole board about 4 months before the expiration of their minimum sentence, also known as the parole eligibility date, PED. 2, review hearings. If parole is not granted at the initial hearing, subsequent hearings are scheduled. The frequency of these hearings depends on the length of the sentence. Sentences less than 7 years, a hearing is typically granted 18 months after the last hearing. Sentences of 7 years or more, a hearing is typically granted 24 months after the last hearing. Decision timeline is 3. The parole board must communicate its decision within 14 days to the prison. Your community offender manager, this is most times this is your probation officer, and your legal representative, according to Prison Reform Trust. The prison must then provide you with a copy within 1 day. Final decision, number 4. All decisions by a hearing panel are proposed decisions. Proposed decisions will become final within 120 days from the date of the parole hearing. Now we got an idea of how that process works. And I think when we looking at different roles and different phases, we have to ask ourselves, what role does common people play, taxpayers play? Obviously, we know that the prison industrial complex system is coming into existence because of taxpayers. So our tax dollars are also pays these parole officers, pay the parole board commission, and we have to let them know that we are not just going to be on the sideline watching your outcome. We're going to make a decision that you need to do what's best in our interest, because these community managers or protectors of the community, they should be listening to what we're saying. We don't need nobody doing anything for us without our input, without our consultation. And this is very important, because when we examine how our political prisoners come home, some of them come home off parole. How does that happen, right? You have somebody who has an extended life sentence, extended prison sentence, excuse me. Somebody like Jalil Abdul Mudakim, somebody like Sundiata Akoli. How did these brothers, how did these captured freedom fighters come home? They come home because they have defense campaigns that are writing letters on their behalf, campaigns that are very consistent in making sure that those who are making these decisions about whether or not they're coming home are put on notice that a community is waiting for them. A community is waiting to give them the best love that they need. So, brother, I know you were, as you said early, you were formerly incarcerated, and you had to deal with the parole board. We were talking before you came on. So, speak on that, brother.
Okay, when we're talking about parole, we're talking about a component part of the total system. So that first of all, you have the legislative body. The legislative body, they introduce, they create what is known as statutes. And the person who's violating the law, you're violating a particular statute, and that particular statute carry with it a sentence, and it has a particular sentence to go with that. And the sentence is supposed to be commensurate with the crime that's under discussion. And then once you have been convicted of having violated the law, then you go before the parole board. And the legislators, in terms of saying that you saying a particular law and saying a particular sentence, they also have a criteria for a parole board is supposed to examine the criteria to determine whether or not a person is eligible for parole. So that's the legislative end, and then the parole interviewers come to the prison, or they have you electronically situation set up so that they can examine the particular prisoner in question and apply the criteria that the legislative body has decided on. That's what the parole board is supposed to do, examine the criteria that the legislative body has decided on in determining parole. That's what's going on. But that is not always the case. Uh, and so that's why your prisoners have complaints about the parole board. I'll give you, for instance, the parole board is supposed to consider several things that the legislative body dictate that they should consider in deciding parole. So when you go to parole board, they are saying that you meet a certain criteria and while you were serving your sentence. And that's what the parole board is supposed to consider, how you behave while you were in the prison. And, but oftentimes the parole board don't stick to that. They say that they determine, the parole board say that the parole board say they feel that the particular prisoner uh, has not met their criteria, their personal criteria. But that's not the way it's supposed to be. So, as I say, the criteria is: have you gone to school? Are you a married person? Do you have a work history? Do you have a prior record? They consider all of that in deciding the parole, and they consider your conduct while in jail to determine if you would be a likely reoffender, or if you are a person who conduct yourself in such a way that you will be a threat to other persons should they release you. And those are the things that the parole board is supposed to consider. But basically, they say in many cases that they don't like the particular prisoner and they feel that the prisoner should do more time. That's what goes on. And that's a complaint that general prisoners have in general.
I know on May 20th, Northeast Political Prisoner Coalition and HOLLA had, supported and participated in the work that RAP, Release Aging Prisoners. The organization was founded in 2013. They organized a bus uh, uh, trip to Albany, where elected officials were approached, and they were put on notice about bills that were dealing with their campaign. Let me go to their website and speak as precise as possible about their campaign, so that I don't get it wrong. So, RAP was founded in 2013 by three formerly incarcerated people who collectively served 70 years in state and federal prison, along with a civil rights attorney who had long represented political prisoners and other incarcerated elders. They shared and understood the all too common experience of growing older and watching others grow older in prison as a result of long prison sentences and few opportunities for release. Our work began with the purpose of not just releasing older people from prison, but also ensuring that people serving long sentences for violent crimes were included in any movement for criminal legal system reform and prison abolition. We saw an all-inclusive movement to end mass incarceration as critical to uprooting the racism and perpetual punishment baked into U.S. prisons and jails and society as a whole. So that is their mission. That's their part of their history, and to be a part of that campaign was very important. So, the release aging people in prison. That's the RAP. That's the acronym for RAP. It's a grassroots advocacy organization created and led by formerly incarcerated people. I just wanted to make sure that I got everything correct, because you need to check out their website. They're doing some incredible work, and to be a part of that work, you see what it takes to let people know that there are people around that is advocating for the release of people who are growing old in prison. I know that when some of our political prisoners are paroled, prior to their being paroled, we meaning the community, have to come together and make certain arrangements for them. They're going to need a place to stay. They're going to need employment if they're able to work. They're going to need clothing. They're going to need a number of things. How did your family prepare for you coming home?
Well, my family wrote letters, and I turned those letters over to the parole board. And basically, at the time, my sister had her own business. She was an accountant, and I have a background in accounting. I majored in accounting in college. And she said that should I be released, I would be available to work in her place. And my other sister said that I could stay with her. And so that was to let them know that I would more than likely would not be considering committing a crime, because I would have a place of employment and I would have a place to stay. Uh, but I think that we want to, on the parole board, see, we want to consider this though. And I'm glad you went to the Albany to speak with the legislators, because see, when you are sentenced for a crime, before you are sentenced, the judge consider a pre-sentence report, and the report has the salient factors that they want to consider. Consider that I pointed out. They want to consider: were you married at the time of the commission of the crime? Did you go? Were you in school? Were you employed? And did you have a record? And that's the judge considers that, and then the judge gives you a sentence. So that the parole board then they want to consider those things too, and they also, so the salient thing that they want to be concerned with is how you behave during the course of you doing your sentence. That's the salient thing that should be the deciding factor. And should a person not have behaved in a violent way or some unusual way, then that person should be paroled. And that is not the case. And that is why the group Holler, and that is why RAP, I went to the legislative body myself to speak to legislators about uh, the, the conduct of the parole board, to tell them to encourage the parole board to comply with the law. Because if they're not complying with the law, then they're violating the law and they're behaving in a criminal manner, in a a RICO manner, continuing criminal enterprise. They are whooping on people, and they are being paid for it. They're getting a salary, so that's like carrying out a continuing criminal enterprise. They're doing things illegal, and they're making money while doing it. And that's why I went to the legislator and talked to certain 3 or 4 legislators about encouraging the parole board to conform to the law. But in terms of what I did to prepare myself, as I said, I got the letter from my sisters. One offered me a job, and the other one said I would have a place to stay. Those are the things that I did.
I was doing research prior to this coming on because it's always important that we set the climate for our discussion. In this particular discussion on parole board, parole hearing, and those who've been granted parole and how they have to deal with life after that. And I thought about Malcolm X, being that this is his 100th year birthday. We're recognizing the anniversary of his birth. I thought about his sentence, and I thought about when he had to deal with parole, and I thought about his contribution to his people, to his community. So as I did my research, I came across his sentence. His sentence was, I think, 8 to 10, and he did 7 years, and then he was on parole for 3 years. Immediately after he came home from prison, he was already involved in work to better the lives of everyday people, his people. I thought about what we gain from when our people finally come home, who've been away from us for so long. And when I think about that, I think about our political prisoners, people like Sundiata Acoli. After all these decades of imprisonment, when he did go to the parole board, they wanted him to do another 2 years before he came home. But he had a defense committee that was committed to him coming home, and they actually went to court for him to come home. Jalil Abdul King, he had an original sentence of 25 years to life and wound up doing over 50 years before he was eventually paroled. And I think that, that's an unfortunate situation, because when we look at the amount of time that these political prisoners have done before they came home, we like, why didn't they come home a lot sooner? What's the point of the state having them incarcerated for so long? What did they gain? And in fact, what did we lose, right? Because if Malcolm would have been home before that 7 years, right, we would have gained even more from him than we did. And the same thing with Jalil Abdul King and Sundiata Acoli. And I think that this point is valid because that makes us more serious and more enthusiastic about the work of organizing to get our political prisoners a home, because they have qualities that we need to use now with all the things that we're facing.
Now, that's why I say the parole board is a component part of a total mechanical mechanism, a genocidal mechanism, and a parole board is a component part of that mechanism. And we see that when we see the parole denials. Jalil was denied parole numerous times. Sundiata was denied parole numerous times. That's what I'm saying now. The judge has considered their prior records and whether or not they went to college and that sort of thing. And they considered that. And so they considered that, the judge considered that in determining the sentence. And in Jalil's case, they had 25 to life. So after 25 years, the parole board is supposed to primarily consider how did they behave during those 25 years of incarceration. And that is supposed to communicate to the judge their inclination for being able to stay out without violating the law again. And so Jalil and them behaved in such a way that it was clear that they would not violate the law again and that they would positively contribute to the community. So why didn't they let them out? In my case, I went to the parole board about 3 or 4 times, maybe more. I forget how many times. And at one point, I never said anything. Every time the parole board would say, Tyree, your parole has been denied, that's okay. And I just left, And on one occasion, they said, I got to the door, I was leaving. They said, Haskin, come back. Don't you want to say anything? Not really, but I'll say something. And I said, you people are carrying out genocide, and you had an opportunity to do something very good. by paroling me, but you refuse to do that. So that means that you are willingly involved in the genocide of black people. And I had that on tape, and I would play that to the prisoners, you know, when I the other prisoners, to let them know this is what I had to say to the parole board. I was clear that they are participating in the genocide of black people because they had no reason to deny me parole. They said that I had a criminal record. I did not have a criminal record. I repeatedly told them that, and they said that I was convicted in the state court, and that constituted being a prior record. And so we was appealing that in the courts because they had double jeopardy me. And the court agreed that they had double jeopardy me. So after that, they didn't have no reason to deny me parole because they said I had a criminal record and all of that. And I'm saying that is not the case. And so they had to parole me. But I was supposed to I did 17 years, and I was really eligible for parole after doing 3 years because I was a vet, I was married, I was working, I was going to college. All of those things knock off time that you're supposed to do. So I was really eligible for parole in 3 years, but they carried my sentence and made me do 17 years, from 3 years to 17 years. So I did 14 years because of their particular prejudice. So to me, I told them, in addition to having told them that there was a component of the genocidal machine, I told them that there was a violation of the law and they was criminals and that they should be doing life in prison because they was criminals and keeping me in jail. And they was carrying out a continuing criminal enterprise and they was making money. They sitting there getting paid to violate the law. They was violating the law and they getting paid for it. So to me, they was carrying out a continuing criminal enterprise. And that's why I took advantage of that occasion to go to Albany to talk to legislators about that and to encourage our legislators who felt the way we felt that they should continue to pressure the parole board members to conform to the law. The law said that persons like myself was eligible for parole, and they had no reason to deny me parole, but they went on to do that anyway. So that to me, they was behaving in a criminal way. And we look at Jalil and them. They went from 25 years to 50 years. So
Yes.
that's a whole nother thing, a
Yeah.
whole nother life sentence. And so, and the parole board did that, and they were doing that in an illegal manner.
What was the relationship with the community as you was going through this in preparation for being paroled and knowing that there's a possibility that you might get denied? When did you reach out to the community before you go to the parole board, or did you reach out to them after you got denied parole?
No, I had talked with lawyers, about that, and they agreed that I should be paroled. And I had written up things to appeal it, and they said those things, the write-ups I had done, should be favorably received, although they weren't. They continued to deny me parole.
I know that speaking of Sekou Odinga and hearing about his campaign, because there was a the defense committee for him,
Mhm.
and they produced a hip hop album. I know he had Dead Prez. They was endorsing his release, and you had a number of other people endorsing his release. And I think that was very important because he was inspired by those who were organizing and fighting for him, and he was doing more for himself in terms of knowing how his sentence happened and finding any flaws in it. And he's told me himself that he found flaws in it, and that's what allowed him to come home. But it's a collective effort. Everybody has to do their part, right? You're in prison, you have to go to that law lobby, study the law. You are out in the community, you gotta let the community know that that person or those people who are in prison has a voice. Our political prisoners need to know that outside of prison, we are their voice. And talking about those who are conscious of struggle, our liberation struggle, right? We have to always include political prisoners in our liberation struggle because these are fallen combatants, and fallen meaning that they have been captured because of their views, because of their organizing techniques and skills, and just being a threat to the state, and the state countering with these revenge sentences.
Okay, we had a defense committee in New Haven, and they had turned us to be the New Haven Three, and I had a good lawyer, and also uh, because I was in prison, and I felt that I would not be able to communicate with my lawyer the way I wanted to, even though I felt he was a good lawyer, I decided to study law. I hooked up a curriculum, and I studied these components of what a lawyer studies, and so that I would be capable of pretty much handling my case in case I was not, for some reason, uh, the relationship I had with my lawyer would have been broken off or something. But that the relationship I had with my lawyer continued, and I agreed that the way the authorities had handled our case, they had double jeopardy me. I studied the matter, and I felt that they had double jeopardy the matter. The lawyer I had, he also felt that they had double jeopardy us, and he appealed that situation, the double jeopardy situation. He proceeded to prosecute that situation, and what happened was the court, they were a component part of the total genocidal mechanism, so that they slow walk our this matter of double jeopardy. That case, they slow walked that case for about 15 years, and then they made a decision on it because the parole board was one of the things they were saying is that I had a record. I didn't have a record. I'm saying in order to have a record, you have to have a prior sentence. So I'm saying, when is the prior sentence? Because you're talking an instant offense, and you're talking a prior offense. If you say I have a prior record, so we're talking two dates. But you saying the present instance occurred on this particular date, and the prior incident occurred on the same day. How's that? How is that possible? That's not physically possible to have two sentences, and then you're talking about they occurred on the same day. But the court slow walked that case for 15 years. And then after, when I went up to the parole board, they couldn't say I had a prior record because,
Like they totally disregarded your time. Like your time was unimportant to them.
well, they expressed their negative views on us, black people, and especially black political prisoners. But that they slow walked it, and then when I went to the parole board after 15 years, they couldn't say I had a prior record because the case the judge ruled in our favor, and that meant that the elimination of the prior offense, and so that's when I got parole. You see. But the parole board knew this all the time, and they continued to deny me parole each time I went up because of that. And they knew that they was wrong. And so that's why I said they were knowingly carrying out the criminal act of holding us hostage.
I know that when I'm back to May 20th, right? My experience, along with the other comrades, was very enlightening. It was very powerful because as we proceeded to speak to these elected officials, I had my shirt on, Free Joy Power, right? They told me I couldn't show my banner at some certain points, but throughout the area, I was showing the banner. And I raised these points like there's always something we can do to raise awareness about our political prisoners, our captured freedom fighters, and let these elected officials know that they have a voice. Because once you go to their front office and you're sitting down and you're having a discussion with them, they know that you are serious about this matter. And now they have to go on record of dealing with this in a certain way because you actually have a date and a time and a content in which you engage them. And from that, they have to be accountable for how they dealt with it. And I think that people need to be aware of their powers and use it accordingly.
I know, like in the case of Jalil and Herman and other brothers, we had a legislator, Charles Barron, who spoke to other legislators, and they felt, as we felt, that the parole board should be making different decisions. And as I said, when you went up to speak to the legislator, it impacted them. When I went up to speak to the legislator, it impacted them. And Charles Barron, a legislator at that particular time, took the lead in talking to other legislators, and then those legislators, the group of them, communicated to the parole board that they were wrong in making the decisions that they were making, and that they should make a favorable decision. And they ultimately did make a favorable decision. And I feel that Charles Brown and the other legislators, they had an impact on the parole board and on the system to do the right thing. So.
Absolutely, man. So, we appreciate those who advocate for our political prisoners, advocating for the issues of common people. So you know who they are. Go seek them out. I'm talking about these elected officials, hold them accountable. We got an election year happening. Election day is right around the corner. If you get a call, like I got a call from an elected official, potentially elected officials, a representative, make sure you ask those key questions. I know I asked what's their position on political prisoners. Make them earn your vote. Anyway, that being said, y'all know, call free them all. Got any last words, my brother?
Free them all, free all political prisoners, and free all prisoners of war. Free them all.
Peace and love, y'all. See you next week.
Indians live proud and free before the oppressor's slavery. Black people live proud and free. How many more? Tell me now. How many more? Don't you stand on the sidelines and say you're not involved. Don't try to convince yourself that these problems don't affect you at all. Because now it's Lebanon, Azania, Grenada. How many more? Tell me now. How many more? Don't you stand on the sidelines and watch your children